So my name's Danielle Griffin. I am the Program Manager of ANZ Seeds of Renewal. And this is round 24 of the program, which is pretty amazing. I think it's the longest running partnership at FRRR, which is, I think a testament to both organisations with regards to us coming together at a really critical time in rural and regional Australia's development. FRRR was just starting, and ANZ was looking at what to do in the agricultural sector and how to support, and drought was really serious, and they partnered with us, and through that partnership and developing this grant program over this year's, there's a real value in understanding how organisations can actually reach out and support the smaller community organisations. So today we'll talk about round 24, and a lot of it is kind of already in the guidelines. I'd firstly like to acknowledge country and the traditional custodians of the country on which you're coming to across Australia today, and that we're looking to support, and the connections to land, sea and community that we all have wherever we live. And I'd like to pay my respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today and any that are present. Personally, I'm coming to you from the south coast of New South Wales, and this is the home of the Walbunja people and of the Yuin Nation. So today I'll talk about FRRR and ANZ, both the organisations, and I suppose how that influences what this grant program is about. And then we'll talk about the program. I think, guidelines are available for you. I'm going to really concentrate probably on the key themes, and I invite you to use the chat to put questions in about your projects, and we will break after I've talked about the program and just have a bit of a conversation. You can ask specific questions if you want to during that time. And then we'll get on to the, grant seeking tips and tricks, kind of just setting yourself up for successfully making an application. So FRRR, or the Foundation for Rural and Regional Renewal, if you're not familiar with us, we are the only national foundation that's focused on remote, rural and regional areas of Australia. And we work with government, philanthropy and community to fulfil the local purposes and direct investment. We are just entering a new strategic phase, and one of the big things we like to say to funders and also to people in rural and regional communities is that we believe that where you live shouldn't limit your opportunities. And we're very much focused on supporting community-led projects, because we believe that people that live in these communities know what they need. As I said, the partnership with ANZ has been going for 24 years. And our alignment there is understanding, as a, commercial organisation, what they're focused on, also just broader in the wellbeing of the community and how that works out. So their strong social and governance focus areas are financial wellbeing, environmental sustainability and housing. And so this program looks to reflect how we can support those focus areas in rural and regional and remote communities through the grant program. So round 24 opened last Wednesday on the 1st of July, and it will close at 5 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on Thursday, 30th of July, 2026. So just please take note of those dates. It's really important. We have $250,000 to distribute nationally, and the grants are up to the value of $15,000. We have 4 key focus areas in this grant program: improving environmental sustainability, improving financial wellbeing within the community, improving access to housing, and projects that help communities thrive. As I said, I'll go into more detail on each of these themes. But firstly, I'm just going to quickly go to the eligibility criteria because I think it's really important. We've got a lot of people joining us today. I don't want to waste anyone's time, and I'm very happy. I think in doing this, we can have a look at some of the projects that are there, and at the end of this, you might want to check in on your eligibility as an organisation or with regards to the project you're looking at. So the projects must benefit communities in remote, rural or regional Australia. So we referred to the regional areas in the Australian Health Locator, and also the Monash model for RA 1 to 5 location kind of considerations. So RA1 is metro, and we don't fund any programs for communities within that designated area. We are looking to prioritise smaller communities under 15,000 people, just recognising that they are less likely to have access to funds, and so looking to support those who need the funds the most. It doesn't mean we don't fund larger organisations or communities, particularly because we know that a lot of larger regional settings are hubs for the smaller surrounding communities to access particular services and needs. So it's not a hard and fast rule, but it is really important to understand how we're directly supporting a community of people. They must be charitable projects and offer a clear public benefit. So this grant is open for not-for-profit organisations. You don't have to be a charity with deductible gift recipient tax status. So I think that's a really important access point for small volunteer and local charities or organisations to be able to access funds through this program. And so you need to either have an ABN or have an incorporation certificate to demonstrate that. One of the things we tend to look at is the constitutions of organisations to understand, how they actually meet that not-for-profit criteria with regards to where funds go to and how funds are distributed if the organisation was to wind up. If you are an agency or an organisation that wants to deliver into a particular community for a charitable project, you can be auspiced by a not-for-profit organisation, and there is information within the guidelines in regards to that, and how you get their written approval to actually do that. We will only accept 1 application per round, so just really important to notice that. Next thing, what cannot be funded is really important. There's a couple of critical ones in this grant program that are actually related to ANZ and their legal and governance requirements. Firstly, federal, state and local government organisations, projects won't be considered from them. A lot of it has to do with government and bias and demonstrating that they're not being influenced in any way. And this also relates to projects that directly benefit children under the age of 16, including projects in primary and secondary schools. There is rules about advertising financial services to children under 16, and so To ensure there's no undue influence in that regard, this grant program doesn't fund projects in that way. That means that we will fund projects for children over 16, typically outside of school environments though. Additional things of what we can't fund is ongoing organisational operational costs. The grant needs to go to project-related costs. We can't fund the encouragement or advancement of sport, recreation and social activities, as these are not considered charitable activities under Australian law. So if you are a sporting organisation, and we recognise that sporting organisations are, you know, really important social and community engagers in small communities. So you just need to demonstrate the charitable outcomes and benefit to the wider community of any project that might be run by the club. We don't support political organisations, religious or sectarian organisations, where the project is purely focused on the religious or sectarian activities. This is for local projects, so overseas travel and overseas projects aren't funded. Similarly, private prizes, gifts, trophies or awards can't be funded. We don't obviously fund private businesses or sole trader or private interests, or projects solely focused on animal welfare. So any project that may be working in animal welfare needs to demonstrate the involvement of the local community and the broader benefit of the benefit to the animal welfare in relation to the people in the community. Just really specific to FRRR, if you have any overdue final reports from any FRRR grants awarded in the last 7 years that haven't been reported, then you will be considered, an application will be considered ineligible. So I think that's just really important to consider. You don't want to knock yourself out just because, you know, somewhere along the line someone's forgotten to report. So just checking on those kind of things. Making sure that we understand the budget items, there's quotes or rationale for them, particularly for any items over the value of $1,000. Understanding that this grant program will be announced towards the end of October, beginning of November. So any grant project needs to commence after the grants are announced. So we can't be paying for anything retrospectively before the grants are announced. If the application is incomplete, it's very unlikely that we'll actually follow up. So just, you know, just being thorough in actually doing that work. Now let's get into the alignment of the grant program and the key 4 themes. So firstly, improving environmental sustainability. So a really broad range of projects can be supported through this. You can be doing education projects. When we talk about environmental sustainability, it's very broad, and when we're looking at things as well around things like solar panels and renewable energy increasingly. So a lot of broad things can fit into that. And there could be an improvement of environmental standards within communities by doing things perhaps like inviting circular economy practices into small organisations. So also supporting the community to adopt better environmental practices. Often recycling comes into that, or composting, those kind of activities. And encouraging community participation to improve environmental sustainability. I think what we recognise is that there's a really great benefit if we are living and working in communities that are more sustainable because of the natural environment that they are in, or even just the way we actually use products. So it can be really broad. in regards to how you do that, and how you think about environmental sustainability. A couple of projects we have here. I thought this one was really important to highlight because, as I said earlier, around animal welfare, and also that idea of conservation, understanding what the human or community benefit is really important. This is a wildlife sanctuary in Tenterden, WA. And one thing that was really important to that was actually making sure they could restore the habitat, and run public education campaigns. What's really important is this is volunteer run. There's a huge investment by the community into this organisation. It's a really important part of the organisation. They do a lot of education. And so I think it's a really great example of where we see what a massive community benefit there is through environmental sustainability projects like this that both support habitat and fauna. Another one that's more probably what I was talking about earlier is this one by the Condom and Landcare Group, seeding a community landcare nursery. I think what's really important is understanding, the sustainability of continuing to promote and propagate native plant seeds. And we were funding through this a setup of the Landcare site and additional material, so irrigation pots, potting mixes and potting benches, and a project officer was employed. So as we said, this grant will pay for wages that are directly related to the delivery of the project. And we also appreciate that volunteers are fantastic, but sometimes you actually need someone that's paid, has the commitment, is actually committed to those 3 hours a week for a year to set up and establish and support volunteers in doing that work. What's really great to see is the outcome of this. What we find is when we bring people together to do these projects is the social benefits that are developed, and also just expanding that environmental sustainability more broadly. And this also in some ways fits into the financial wellbeing idea, because as we see, we've got people, getting their Cert 2 conservation. So that there's also lots of different pieces that come into the game. And if someone was writing an application for this and there's a possibility that this might happen, I'd be really interested as an assessor to understand what you hope might come out of this. You can have your really clear deliverables, but also what you hope might come out of the program. When we look at financial wellbeing, very often we're talking about the most vulnerable people in the community and their ability to build financial knowledge, promoting better financial behaviour and decision-making, job readiness, which is really important, and also improving money management skills. Some great projects here. This one, which is the Kayala Indigenous Business Project, and this was really addressing the gaps in economic outcomes for Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities by having a specialised consultant, once again employing someone to upskill people with financial and business skills. And this also contributes to that idea of social procurement. So procurement that actually has a broader community benefit through supporting businesses that might be social enterprises or don't have the opportunities of bigger businesses. And I think really great outcomes of here was actually launching a social procurement toolkit that's publicly available. And this really aligns to one of the tenets of this grant program, which is that idea of sustainability, like what will be left over, what will this project produce that will continue to have benefit for community. And then more specifically is this project, which is Realising Every Dream, a Money Mates project that was really about supporting school leavers with a disability to transition to employment. We know this cohort can be very vulnerable with regards to financial management and entering into the workforce. So providing this kind of training, which was really interesting to see. It was all about making sure they were being mentored to actually support other people with a disability as well. So once again, something that shows this building of skills and, it kind of expanding the actual project outcomes at the end of the program. Improving access to housing. We're conscious that a $15,000 grant mightn't seem like it'll go very far for housing, but we're very interested in projects and initiatives that could help homelessness, and that can include, we have supported things like Orange Sky Laundry in some areas and the development of, resources for people that might be doing it tough to access, better living conditions. And this is also about ensuring that disability isn't a barrier to people's inclusion in community facilities, and that they are able to participate and engage in the community as everyone else is. So a really great project here was in Waroona in Gympie, Queensland. And this was increasing the accessibility of the community daycare centre through putting in a bathroom and kitchenette facilities that meant it was disability-friendly infrastructure. This ensures that people can come and participate in activity that are offered at that daycare facility and feel comfortable with regards to the facilities that will be there to support them in their participation and being comfortable. And I think what we understand is when more people can participate, we have greater social capital arising out of projects. This is a really good example of, the 15,000 going to support crisis accommodation and recognising the importance of crisis accommodation. So this actually supported being able to pay for hotels or, emergency accommodation when people just turned up at this crisis at the Aboriginal Corporation there. What's really important is actually enabling organisations to support people at the point of crisis and not have to let them go, because then they're able to bring them into the system and support them with permanent housing. So, once again, we recognise this is a really important part for small communities to be able to do. This is our fourth area of focus, and it is quite broad. So what we try to do is emphasise and to support people in developing their projects is really to think of those two key program tenets. So vibrant communities. How will your project be diverse and inclusive? So I was talking about that strong social capital. How does it include and support everyone in a way that actually helps the communities to thrive? And also sustainable communities. What are we doing that will kind of contribute ongoing? So are you putting resources into a community that are going to be available, for the next 5 to 10 years, or, for something you see as a really important need now and has an ongoing need? One thing that we don't tend to fund through this program is smaller festival activities that are kind of one-off events. So I think it's really important to think of that idea of what does a sustainable community look like? Now, it might be a nice combination example of that is resources for an annual festival that mean that the volunteer-run committee is better set up to continually build on that festival every year. So rather than the rides that'll happen at that festival, what's going on in the engine room that needs funding, and that will ensure that that festival can happen next year and continue to grow, and even upskilling people in better software or something like that, if we are looking at something like digital inclusion. This is a great example, I think, of projects that help communities thrive. The Rex Theatre in Charlton was closed due to COVID, and as a lot of us know, coming out of that period was really difficult. So the board there wanted to revitalise the site and function as a community progress hub, and they engaged a consultant to kind of look at that strategic 10-year plan. And we appreciate that it's important to get that expertise to support volunteers and boards to actually develop and really focus and build something for the community going forward. What we really liked about this project was how it was engaging the 4 surrounding communities of Charlton to get their input and ensure that what was being developed was actually relevant and valuable to the group, so that then they had a strategic roadmap that came out of it that they were able to launch and engage people in. When they reported back to us, we understood that they did 5 in-person workshops and also 1 online survey. I think what's really interesting sometimes, and this is just broadly when you're doing your project, and it can be pretty tough doing projects, is understanding where you might, be running a whole engagement thing and you only get 2 participants turning up and you feel like you haven't really hit the mark. It's difficult sometimes to get people to activities, and we appreciate that. We always say, just report to us what happened and what you learned and what happened. What's really important to see here is that they did an online survey and they got 60 responses. So it's, when you're thinking about your project development, think about the best way to engage people. Where are you going to get the information? Are they going to be able to attend at these times? And if it is more difficult, can you do things online? So, and also, creating spaces where people can be honest about what they need, what they have issues with, really having those frank conversations. That means that what's developed at the end is something that people value because they feel they've all had input into. So what makes a project successful, particularly for this grant program, I think, is understanding where your focus is. What do you want to align with? Many projects might align with several or all 4 areas in some ways. So if you can make it clear what your key area is, and then also demonstrate to us where it's also kind of ticking the boxes on those others, that's a great start. We will be looking at communities and understanding what else might be there. So if it looks like it's duplicating an existing service, that will weaken your project. We want to understand your organisation's capability to deliver the project and the connection with the target beneficiaries. So are you the right organisation to be doing this work? Really important, we emphasise this in everything we do, is the letter of support from local stakeholders, or demonstrating the need and the relationships that you have. Sometimes this can be through surveys. Sometimes it can be through interactions on social media that have been had, or other activities. So if a letter of support isn't as relevant, but you just want to demonstrate that this is a need that community is really involved in, just try and capture something and share it with us that really demonstrates that local engagement. Unsuccessful projects, usually it may be that we just feel that this is a project that's run for a year and there's no other funding. They want to run it for another year. I know that can be really difficult for organisations when projects are really important. If you do have something like that, what we encourage you to do is really consider what you can do to make that project more sustainable in the future. What are you doing to enhance? What have you learnt from what you've done? How are you building on the project? So if there's something you want to continue that's really important, we just want to see that growth and development in the activity, rather than just we just need to do this again. Articulating the need or the opportunity, I think we always go back to that, because sometimes it can be a bit of a so what, and so that's really important to answer. And I think when you balance it with the unsuccessful and the strong, you can see it's that being really clear on what you're doing, and any lack of engagement with target beneficiaries or stakeholders is where we have questions. This is another really important thing, in that, have you provided enough information? What I'm trying to convey is, tell us a story. Don't get bogged down in the details, but really be thinking about those key things that are important to know. After we've read an application, sometimes we will have questions like, who owns the building? And we've got templates there for you to actually, get permission from the building owner, etc. So there's support documentation in the structure of our programs. Planning permits for the disabled toilets, so council engagement there. How you're going to do certain things like recruiting participants for a financial wellbeing program, engagement with local Indigenous traditional owners, particularly if there's environmental projects or anything that might involve cultural considerations. Where the expertise is, what credentials are you using for the people that are going to be training other people or advising on projects? And yeah, is the project charitable? So I'm going to break for a minute and have a look at the chat, and also just see if anyone's got any questions. So I'll stop sharing. And we've got lots of stuff in the chat that I might just throw to April.
Yes, I've been answering a few of them. Great. So we'll go through those ones. I'll read those out. Sure. There was a question about eligibility if a festival is over 50 years old. And yes, you would be eligible, but you have to explain why you need the funding. And there's one question about festivals need more community involvement, especially kids, but FRRR appear to exclude programs that involve schools. We don't really exclude schools, but in this program, it doesn't fund kids under 16. We've got other programs that support schools. They have to be government schools, and you have to have a reason why you need support for that school. One's about In a Good Place that opens today. It's a different program. It's about mental health. If you're already, yeah, do you want to answer that one, Danielle?
No, you go on.
Okay. So if you've already got a project that's with FRRR and you're completing it still, you can apply, but you have to really tell us how you're going to have that capacity to manage that project and the new one.
There is a good question here in regards to where an asset owned by local government but run by the community. Yes, you will be considered. And if you've got any questions and you are in that situation, we know there's often community volunteer committees that are parts of local government. So please give us a call and have a chat. You can come directly to me as well. My email will be in what goes out here today. So feel free to come back to me with questions as well, because I know that can feel a little bit like it's blocking things. And I think April answered that really well with regards to children under 16. We appreciate that it's really important to engage children in festivals and any community activities that are going on. This is really specifically where children are the target beneficiaries. So it might be that you wanted to run a tree planting education workshop with a local primary school, and you were funding that whole incursion and activity and that. that would be too direct for us to be saying ANZ Seeds of Renewal is supporting this project. So, but if you're a land care and you're running, large planting activities and you're inviting families to that, that's not disqualified. So just letting you know that it's really more specifically where we see children, are going to be engaged in the grant really specifically, that we need to be conscious of supporting the governance of the organisation.
And there's another one about eligibility. So if you're not, if our guidelines don't answer your questions about eligibility, you can call us. So we've got grants officers on the phone and they'll ask you questions and find out. It's best to find out before you apply if you're eligible or not. Otherwise, you spend a lot of time writing your application and you get there and you weren't eligible at the start.
And I've just found this one, Under Thriving Communities, would a relief and recovery centre focused on community preparedness be eligible? Yes, it would be and I think what's really important in the current environment of, ongoing disasters, recovery and, preparedness is an ongoing need for communities. So I think that is understanding how that's an important part of the community thriving. Obviously, that's about inclusion, social capital, all those elements come into that. So we would definitely consider that a strong project. Can we apply for this grant with the same project as recent application for the FRRR Small and Vital Grant? Yes, you can. Obviously, this project program has a little bit more money. It's 10,000 versus 15,000 versus 10,000. So you could be going for the same amount. You may have a slightly enlarged project, but as long as it aligns to those one of those 4 focus areas, then you can definitely put in an application here. But what I would suggest is that you talk to one of the Strengthening Rural Communities program managers or grants officers and get any feedback on why your project wasn't successful. This is, I think, a really important thing that FRRR offers unsuccessful grantees with regards to their ability to understand how they can strengthen their project, where it might, to increase the likelihood of it being funded. So getting that feedback and then putting it into your grant project increases your likelihood of being successful. Can a national, international organisation apply? Yes, you just really need to demonstrate that local connection to community and your actual community that you're going to deliver in. I think a really good example of where we have challenges is where there are online projects that say they're going to support, support remote, rural and regional communities. And realistically, the content or the project isn't focused on that community. It's not directly, it could have a benefit to them, but it's not really considering the unique needs of that community. And I think that's really important for us to understand when we look at these grants, is that we are looking at what strengthens local and kind of bolsters people in that community, which kind of lends itself to that ongoing vibrancy and sustainability. Jennifer, I'm just reading your question with regards to, the kids and the activities there. What grant would suit this? You could have a look at Strengthening Rural Communities, which is open now. And there is a nutrient grant opening tomorrow as well. As I said, one of the things is that idea of one-off activities, probably not the strongest strongest purpose that we see for a lot of our grant programs. We're looking for, investment in something that can be, having an impact that's a bit broader rather than just a fun day. We appreciate inclusion is really important and enabling people to have opportunities for those activities. But yeah, potentially have a chat to one of our grants officers or reach out to talk through your project a bit more thoroughly with myself. Digital project aiming to increase access and visibility to resources. We would really need to see, Abby, that you were reaching people in a specific community and they were able to access those resources and information that you're talking to, and there was an appetite for the resources and they weren't available anywhere else, just with regards to that digital project. So I appreciate that the difference in the metro due to location, and we do fund projects like that, but it is considering what are the specific needs that it's meeting in those community and how do you know that there's an appetite and it's a priority. Could you buy second-hand rather than new for a trailer? Certainly, if the second-hand trailer is more affordable and is going to last for a project, then that definitely is fine, and we appreciate it might be a bit more difficult to get something like a quote for that. But if you have an amount in mind and you might say, well, this is what a new trailer costs, we expect to be buying it at, 60% or 50%, then yes. So we could include a targeted campaign for certain rural areas and report on those who access. Yes, but I'm just suggesting with that targeted campaign that you actually do that engagement with those communities instead of just creating a campaign. Okay, this has been a great chat, and as I said, I will kind of summarize this chat and also this meeting so that this information can be sent out to you with the presentation, so you kind of have it all there to reference later on and also to discuss if you want to reach out. I might now go and talk about our grant program tips and tricks. And once again, continue to put your questions in the chat and we will go to that at the end as well. So just quickly, with assessing applications, it is all about meeting the criteria and how strong the project is regarding a need for its community, and how it might be compared to similar projects, and also activity in surrounding areas. So this is a national program and we have lots of different needs that we're looking to meet with the grant program. We assess the program, the grants internally. We also work with some ANZ volunteers to enable that external perspective and broaden our consideration of a short list of grants. And then we create recommendations that we make to the FRRR CEO, who has the delegated authority from the FRRR board to consider and improve the projects for grant funding. So it is very independent. If there's any conflicts of interest, they are declared. You will be notified about the outcome of the application, whether you're successful or unsuccessful. And as I spoke to earlier, we do advise that you take the chance to get feedback if you're not successful, because it's a great way to build your grant skills and your likelihood of getting funded in the future. So applying for a grant, I think it can seem like a very big thing to be talking to, telling your story to an audience and making sure they understand just what you're doing and just how important it is. What we try to do and what we kind of encourage is planning and being able to tell the story of why this project is coming about. So very much that what, why, when, where, who, how much. So ticking all those boxes on that. Do read all the eligibility and guidelines. If you miss one thing, sometimes it can, you suddenly realise that I'm not going to hit the mark on this one. So we always advise just to go through that and not waste your time. What we're really looking for is there an issue or an opportunity in your community that you're going to be able to solve through doing this project? And what does it look like? Is it an activity? Is it a program? Is it training? Is it equipment purchase? Is it a small infrastructure project? And why is it important for your community? Is there meeting a gap in services? Is there issues in the community? It might even be things like environmental sustainability where people aren't recycling, there's not a great behaviour change, or people have questions about it but no one to talk to, and everyone's kind of saying, oh, we'd really like to learn more about this. We'd like to do a project in, an old part of the community that's, kind of being left to itself. Is there an opportunity? Something like that can also create an opportunity to, expand a community facility with better outdoor areas. We've seen several grants go where education on drought resilient plants is done through creating a garden and then running sessions like that. I think what's really important, or the one thing that tells us the story, is what will happen if you don't do the project? How will the community be, miss out, and why is it important? And this is where, just what kind of detail you need to do. It's just those specifics. Don't be concerned that you need to do lots and lots. Just make it clear that we need to do this, this, and this. We need to run 3 workshops or 2 surveys. And it's, for this reason, the aim of increasing opportunities and improving this. So just being clear. And what will the funds go to? Sometimes that's a bit of a question for us in regards to something that's a bigger project. $15,000 going towards a $50,000 project, and everything's listed there, and we're left wondering, where are these funds going to? What's the critical part of this that you need the funding for? Also, just being really clear on the why, and I think, answering that question on the digital project, it's really important to understand, why are we delivering this project? It's a good idea. It's been talked about for a while. More and more people are asking about it, or coming in, or there might be demand for an increased service. This can be shown through a consultation that's been done, a community survey. Sometimes there's local roadmaps that have been done and projects never got off the ground or have been pursued, and suddenly they're becoming a priority. So, that might be something as an evidence base that you share with us. We're really interested in understanding who's involved in the project. We fund volunteer organisations and organisations with paid staff. But who are the participants? Who are the beneficiaries? What are the skills and experience of key people on your project? And their understanding and relationships with the other beneficiaries. So as we continually emphasise, those letters of support are really critical in understanding that. And sometimes just listing a few of the, the backgrounds of volunteers or people in the organisation and other projects that they've worked on that lend their expertise to this project. Those really detail things of the task, resources and responsibility helps us get a picture of, how will that happen? What are the critical project dates? Obviously, they need to be occurring between November and December, November 2026. and December 2027. So just understanding when that project delivery will happen. We also do appreciate, though, that sometimes you need to understand the grant's going to be happen before you can actually specifically understand the specific dates. So just giving us a bit of an indication of that is fine. Don't feel too locked into really specific things. Also explain that, dependencies on seasonality or, people's availability. Where is really critical for us to understand, because that also helps us understand the planning that's gone in, the permits that are required, anything else that might need to be indicated in your project plan that makes us feel that it's well planned. So yeah, tell us that, the exact time frame mightn't be known, but, it's going to happen between this date and this date. Some dependencies there. How much it will cost? As I said earlier, it might be a bigger project, but these funding's really critical for something that's difficult to fund. You might have fundraised already for quite a substantial part of the project, and you might have some other funders involved, but you're still needing to raise funds, and that's fine. We're not expecting every project to just be discrete and require just the 15,000. So it's just being really clear on the expenditure of the whole project and what this is being funded through this, and giving us quotes or indicating the rationale on the actual costs that you're looking to pay for through the grant. Also, we find that in-kind with services and labour is really, really important for us to understand who's involved, and also the level of support by volunteers, or, if you've got the local farming community just donating their tractors to help you do clearance and that kind of thing. We understand that it is a community project, that everyone's involved. So, don't be concerned. Add in all the small things that people are adding to support you in the project. I like this as just, one of those quick check things to see, have you done what you need to do? Put it all down and then just do a check on, are you using clear, simple language? Assume that I know nothing about your organisation, your project, or your community. Be specific when answering questions. Avoid technical language and define words where necessary. So, create acronyms at the beginning and then you can use them again and again, but support us by not just creating acronyms at the start that we may not understand. Use evidence to support claims where possible. Make it clear how you're going to use the requested funds. Use facts, not opinions. I think is always important to just go back to that and make sure you can verify the statements you're making about the need or the opportunity. FRRR has lots of resources, so we encourage you to look on our website and have a look at those for project planning, budgeting, reporting, other useful resources. Seeing what other people have done might just spark some ideas. Obviously, ANZ Seeds of Renewal is open now. Strengthening Rural Communities is open throughout the year, and it's one round has just closed and another round is now open. And also Nutrient Ag Solutions Community Grants is opening tomorrow with grants up to 5,000. And as I said, I'm the program manager. That's my email address. I'm very happy to get emails in, and I'm happy to make times to speak to people over the coming month. Another look at the chat quickly, and just see if anyone's got any questions from the floor before we conclude today.
There's a question about, is food covered by the grant? And I responded that yes, it can be. has to be integral to the project. An example is a community lunch to support community connection, support people who are in need.
Yeah, perfect.
And
Yes,
the
and
next
also
one
with
is,
training as well. I think it's
yes,
lunch and morning tea. We understand that's important.
yes, but it doesn't have, it should be a smaller part of the expenses of the
Yes.
project. That's all we've got.
Yeah. Excellent. Well, I wish you all good luck. I look forward to seeing your projects. It's really exciting to see so many people interested in the grant program. And once again, feel free to reach out to FRRR at any time in developing your project, just to do a sense check. We are there to support you. We don't want people wasting time, and we want people to present the best opportunities that they can to us. This will be emailed to you in 48 hours with some information from the chat questions that we've had, and also with the presentation, and yeah, a copy of the recording as well. So thank you very much.